Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Safe Defend Live. I'm Phil Nichols. I'm joined today by my lifelong friend, my buddy, my compadre, Dan Cole. How are you, buddy?
Hello, people. I'm doing well, Phil.
Hey, man. Good to have you on here. I'm always excited when you and I get to do this together. I know this is, you've been hooked up, busy, doing so many things like everybody at Safe Defend right now. But today, I think it'd be a good idea. You and I were talking a little bit. Let's talk about some of the with Dr. V, we've talked a lot about right to bang, left to bang, some of the different trainings, things you can do inside the site.
Right.
Let's talk about training. Let's talk about training to prepare. And these aren't necessarily things that you have to use Safe Defend for.
Right.
But these are things that we think are going to better prepare you and your staff if, unfortunately, you have an incident inside the four walls of your school.
Well, and the best way to understand what training is needing is to do a review process of the previous year's incidents.
Yeah.
Have a real good system to sit down with your administrative staff at the building level and even your operations team, what we consider the secretaries and folks in that operations center, front office that have eyes and ears on everything. Get a good understanding of what they perceive went well when there was an incident. And I'm talking anything from a weather emergency that they pushed out over the intercom or a medical emergency on campus. So by reviewing these incidents, finding out what went well, finding out where there was a little confusion, that's how you build your best training program.
What do you brought up weather, and I think that's something, especially in the areas that we live in. I'm down here in Oklahoma where they seem to pop up on a daily basis. I think we've had 40-some this tornado season in the state of Oklahoma. But, severe storms, it could be winter storms, it could be a lot of different things. But I think we kind of almost take those kind of things for granted. We get so caught up in talking about the horrific of active shooter situations, which are led by active killers or stabbings or incidents inside the walls that are direct, human to human violence. There's a lot of things we got to think about, weather being one of the major ones.
Well, I tell you, over the years, having a chance to work in a lot of community volunteer fire departments and then working with Missouri Task Force out of Boone County, Missouri, one of our assets that's really overlooked and underutilized is that county emergency management team.
Yeah.
Your county emergency management official, they have so much good information, and it is updated daily, if not hourly, when something's going on in the community that everybody needs to be aware of. Yeah. So I really encourage my partner schools to have that relationship with the emergency manager. I'm talking a phone call relationship. So you have the understanding when there's maybe a high risk for fire in the area. You know how it is in Oklahoma, Kansas, Western Kansas areas.
Wildfires, yeah.
Those emergency managers are aware of that. Same thing with tornadic activity, thunderstorms. They're aware of that usually 24 hours in advance.
Yeah.
If you have that relationship with that county official and just say, hey, would you pick the phone up and call my office and keep us in the loop? They love that. They love having that interaction with people that are actually players in what they do. Because anytime you have a major incident, man, I'll tell you what, those schools, they become either a resource of recovery, or they're somewhere where we really have to consider a protection, high value protection. So,
and over the years, I'm, as you were talking about the wildfires, I'm thinking about all of our rural schools out there that it's not, where we grew up, I think the most beautiful place in the world.
Yeah.
Flint Hills of Kansas, every year, not so much this year because there wasn't anything to burn, but we'd always have burn season.
Yeah.
And you think of these rural schools, Hamilton, Kansas, right? Or think of just any of the small towns. Every state has them.
Right.
A wildfire is a real thing because typically they're several miles from the local volunteer department or from the city that happens to service that area or whatever your situation is personally. That's a real thing that I don't think a lot of people do think about. And we were talking a
Right.
lot of times, our administrators, we see a lot of folks that they know who they are, but there's not that regular communication. So
Right.
that is something that can have a direct impact by just making a phone call.
So the good thing about, the natural cover fire in a high wind situation, they usually don't sneak up on you. You
Yeah.
see a big column of smoke, you see some things, but just having the awareness and the heads up to communicate with somebody at that level at county government, man, I'll tell you what, it just that way. Then when you do need them for that real emergency, like that weather
Right.
emergency or that train derailment or the hazmat incident on the highway that's less than a quarter mile or mile from your school, that's when you really start doing things that are proactive, and you have a plan in place and you're not reactive.
So if you're going to list out kind of, going back to the training itself,
Right.
what are some key things? I know there's a 5-page document that SafeDefend has internally, a checklist, if you will, going
Right.
through everything. But what are those key areas that a superintendent, site principals, SROs, just everybody that could potentially be involved? So what can they do with the staffs to better prepare them right now?
So a couple things I really want to highlight on are the incident command structure. We worked with a couple schools this year that had major incidents, and they were very well prepared. But I will tell you that when you have a major incident and you have an incident command post set up outside your school, and you have your operations team inside the school is on lockdown, you really have to make sure everybody at that incident command post, their roles are understood between law enforcement, fire, EMS, and you need to have a school official at that incident command post. And you need to make sure your communication with your operations team inside the building is established. And I'm not talking just having a radio connection with them. I'm talking having at least 2 or 3 established connections with people inside the building. So that's real-time information out to the command post, and then all the players are communicating, talking together. So incident command is a huge part of the admin level training. The next training that I really consider important, I touched on it, was that operational level training, which
Right.
is the operations team at the building level, your building principals, your staff at the front office, anybody in that reception area, even your counselors. Those people are the ones that are inside the building, and their training needs to be very specific on guideline oriented. So if this, then this, because they're going to be running the inside all of the proactive steps that get you back to a controlled state. So their training needs to be pretty specific. And then it comes right down to, we like to have our schools train with scripts or narratives. And that covers everything from drills, weather drills, lockdown drills, non-emergency alerts. For instance, if you have a medical emergency on campus, you don't want to lock the building down, but let's say it's a major medical. You've got somebody that's down and receiving CPR. To keep all the children in the building from walking past that and being traumatized, you can get on the intercom if you've got a narrative queued up and just say, alert, medical emergency in the building. We're going to go into safe mode for the next 15 minutes. What that means is just hold in classroom, no hallway access, no playground access. But these are all things that give the school administrator quicker control of any chaotic situation, and it keeps everybody safe.
Yeah, one of the many things you do at SafeDefend, you're interacting a great deal with the schools that are currently using the SafeDefend, whether it's the system or the training or whatever. What are they saying when you talk to them about these things? What kind of feedback are you getting from the site principals, the superintendents, the school boards, the teachers, just everybody involved in those buildings?
Well, I'll tell you what, it gives everybody a voice when you have a tabletop exercise.
Yeah.
So some schools have them regularly, and some schools will have them maybe every 3 years. They're busy Phil, they got a lot going on. And every time something is mandated or there's a new procedure or something gets passed out by legislation, they're just inundated. But I will tell you, when we start talking to schools about these tabletop exercises and these pre-planning and some very simple training options, it resonates. I mean, they understand, if you've got 2,000 students on campus and 120 staff, or if you've got 50 students on campus and 15 staff, it all is the same when it comes down to maintaining a sense of control when there's chaos on campus. If you've got a plan, if you've had some training, it just takes all the stress out of it. I wouldn't say all the stress, but you go from
Yeah.
clear down to a level of 30 or 20 on the stress level.
Right. Well, and I think too, we're talking specific about schools, but pardon me, allergies are killing me, Dano.
Yeah.
We're talking specific about schools, but this applies to private businesses too.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter, hospitals, administrative areas, all these things that Dan's discussing, they apply to those facilities as well. And I think you hit on something that's real important. Training always does one thing. It's the best preparer we have for the real thing, and it's got to be done consistently. I think
right.
They are busy. Everybody's very, very busy, but at the same time, if you can take 15 minutes for once a quarter and run a training and have 4 different trainings throughout the school year, drills, whatever you want to call them. We do them with fire drills now, but if we added to other things, I think I would have a huge impact on the best outcome possible when these kind of things occur.
Well, and you mentioned something that a lot of schools are moving to are everybody knows we need to do our fire drills, our weather drills, and our intruder drills. Now, what can we do to take the stress out of those? Several of our schools have shared with us they went to no surprise drill. I mean, there is no such thing as a surprise drill, and every drill has a narrative that is simple and it is direct and it gives everybody an expected outcome, and it's the same every time. So for instance, when you're going to do a fire drill in a building, it is announced today at 10 o'clock, going to do the fire drill. So the principal then keys up his narrative, reads the script, activates the system. Everybody follows through in the walkthrough. Nobody gets injured. The fear level is low. Then if you ever have a real incident where there was no warning, there was no pre-announcement, it still goes as planned.
Yeah.
Everybody understands this is not a drill. There wasn't a narrative read. We're going to follow through with our training. And I'll tell you where that helps. That helps a lot in that intruder or that lockdown drill.
Yeah. 100%.
We encourage our schools to have at least 3 a year that are narrative driven and mental walkthroughs. Scaring people is not the answer. It's just like when you get on the airplane, they say the exits are here, the mask's going to drop down. You know what's going to happen. My God, you don't want to go through a plane crash or an emergency landing. But I guarantee you at least have some mental preparation. That's just like the schools. If they've got that mental preparation and they understand, and there's always a narrative, the day that there's not a narrative, it's going to go smooth. They're going to make sure the door's locked, the lights off, the children are in a safer corner. If they heard sounds of violence, they're going to take it up a notch. They're going to barricade the door, put some ballistic resistance between the door and the children. If they didn't hear sounds of violence when the intruder system went off, they're probably going to take this as a walkthrough and understand law enforcement's on the way. Life's going to be good. I just need to stay in my room and keep my children in a safer corner.
Yeah, I think you hit a good point. I've talked to some people that think, well, you need to have these no announced trainings, and I'm like, well, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah,
there's the obvious stuff, the trauma and the
right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a complete disaster. We go back to the military. I know in the military when we were doing training, we knew what we were training.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't like they came and rousted y'all out and and, you know, told you nothing and you didn't know it wasn't real until, you know, that's not how it works. So training is about repetition. It's about understanding, being familiar with, okay, when this happens, I do this. When this happens, I do this. That's what it's all about. So I think, you know, and one thing that's really good about SafeDefend right now, there's so many great things happening in the training department with Dr. Becky joining the team several months ago.
Right.
Like, we just really got some cool things out there. So I'm going to put a bow on this. I'm going to give you last word. Is there anything you want to share with everybody before we get off here?
Well, I will tell you, the first 15 seconds of any emergency dictates the next 15 minutes of operation.
Yep.
Be prepared and understand what your action needs to be in that first 15 seconds, and it'll turn out okay.
Dan, I appreciate it. Like I said, it's always good to talk to you and see your handsome face. You have a great day. Keep doing the great work you're doing at SafeDefend. We appreciate it very much. If anybody wants to get a hold of SafeDefend, you can go to SafeDefend.com. Pop right on there, hit an email button, send your question to them. They'll be happy to answer it. Dan, have a great weekend, my friend.
Bill, you too.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.